Rock, I know it's been a while since we actually had a show, but did you stay in the booth the whole time?
I haven't showered in months.
Let's just do the show. Welcome back to a long awaited new edition of the Cult of Crasus. I am your host, Crasus, and with me, as always, my producer, my engineer, my friend above all others. Everyone, Hammer Rockwell, Hammer, take a bow.
Wait, you're not gonna let me out?
So it has been a while. I must admit, everyone, that I've kind of been disillusioned a bit with Star Wars The Old Republic. It has been a game that I've played for quite some time, for the better part of 4 years. And there have been a lot of changes to the game. And if you look at the whole MMO landscape, you're going to notice, a great decrease. You're going to notice a change in business models. And the genre just isn't what it used to be. Now, a lot of that has to do with many choices. Video games are just coming out there, left and right. There's a new resurgence for internationally made video games that have kind of come back into American fandom, if you will. Obviously, the Final Fantasy game is fantastic. But in addition to that, you're having other MMOs coming like Skyforge from Russia, Black Desert is a Korean MMO, and you're seeing Arcade come in, and that took some of the MMO players out, and it introduces them to different aspects of the MMO genre that your most popular MMOs really don't do. I mean, with Black Desert and Arcade, more of a sandbox type situation, which a lot of MMO players will gravitate to. And then, Skyforge has come out with just a unique way to do MMOs, where basically you can change your class. You don't actually have to make a bunch of alts or anything. You can kind of change things on the fly. Each have their qualities, each have their problems. But I would like to focus back on primarily Star Wars The Old Republic. This is being recorded on May the 4th, and so may the 4th be with you. But the problem with Star Wars is really they've kind of spread themselves a little too thin. I don't know if it's motivational issues or what have you, but they're never able to keep a consistent amount of players or keep a lot of people happy because, well, they're not jugglers. All right, in order to be successful at MMOs, you must be a crusty juggler. And they're not jugglers. So it's like this. All right, in the grand scheme of MMOs, you've always had like a leveling story experience, and you've always had an in-game, normally raid experience, and you've always had a PvP experience. Now, in addition to that, you can, throw in other things like crafting and like role-playing sandbox elements. And there's various other things that you can do, like like Star Wars: The Old Republic, putting in Galactic Starfighter. But your bread and butter has always been, your story leveling situation, your PvP, and then your normal PvE in-game content. And that doesn't necessarily just have to be like the raid. Also, at a lesser extent, that's also like shorter 5-man dungeons. And when you've had the most success from an MMO with these elements is your ability to keep them all in motion, all right? Because at some point, your leveling section is going to end. But your best in-game experience and PvP experience have built onto that. I mean, so normally when an expansion comes or a new game comes out, you have some motifs that, kind of follow you along, as you're leveling. And then your in-game dungeons and raids, they correspond to actually be that finale for that story. And also generally your PvP, also kind of enhance that story, like it's just kind of an underlying idea for resources or what have you. But they're generally placed in that atmosphere. In like certain leveling zones, you would have that atmosphere, and people like that because as they're leveling, they basically kind of have a bit of fondness for a particular zone. I mean, to give you an example, it would be like the PvP arena, the Civil War in Star Wars: The Old Republic, basically being on Alderaan, even though everyone has a nightmare of Alderaan. But keeping all these things in motion is what makes a successful MMO. And Star Wars: The Old Republic has never really been able to do that. They've only been able to cast a spotlight on one while ignoring the others. And ultimately, that is one thing that has kind of soured me, with just what I'd like to do. Now, the problem is you can't do that. You can't just focus on one and ignore the others, because basically when MMO players pay their subscription, they want to have a complete experience. And so when you just ignore one and go to another, it's basically you're telling the people who play your game that they should just go buy a $60 PlayStation game and play that, their favorite one. I understand that we have had the video games developers come out and talk about people really like playing the story, and there have been a lot of different people arguing against that and cheering it on. That story is very important, but they're all important and they all have to work. Star Wars isn't doing that, so I'm not gonna play their damn game. And this isn't one of those videos to talk about, well, this is the reason why I quit Star Wars. Those are just all over the place. I'm not that self-important. However, I would like to just talk about the general status of MMOs and video games altogether. I like Star Wars. I love Star Wars: The Old Republic, and it's just sad for me. I do respect and love the idea that there are still a lot of people playing the game, and to a certain extent I can understand basically them making their own fun, right? When you go through the new chapter that comes out, like, you don't go through it a lot. It's not awesome, alright? I mean, the first 9 chapters were, because that's your expansion, your leveling experience, your 5 levels or whatever. But each chapter that comes out is not long enough, and most of them are just not interesting enough. And so, with the lack of group content, because it is an MMO, people are basically stretching in order to provide their own group content. So, what are MMOs lacking altogether? I mean, that's the big question, because it's not just Star Wars. It is MMOs all across the video game universe. What are they lacking? Do they need a challenge? I mean, what's going on? And I like to, kind of delve into that a little bit.
Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, our event has been scheduled for one fall. In this corner, hailing from the internet, weighing in at 85.6 Oka. I didn't know that measurement was still used. The couch commenter, the afternoon delight, Crasus.
I want all you fat, out of shape, no good, MMO loving sweat hogs to keep it down while I take my robe off and show you what a real man looks like.
And his challenger, weighing in at 15 million active players, the relationship killer, the debt dominator, M.M. Hose.
So what's the problem with the MMOs? Everyone always talks about how the MMO genre is dying, and it is. It's irrefutable. The numbers are going down, the revenue is going down. You have Blizzard not even trying to track the subscribers as a valid metric in order to judge the validity of their video game. And so it's dying across the board, right? Subs are going down. And why is that? Well, you gotta feed it. That's right. And the Little Shop of Horrors, if it didn't feed the Venus flytrap, it never would have got to a ginormous one. You gotta feed it, baby. You gotta add content. Okay? That's what you gotta do. If you want to make your MMO great, and you want to inflate the numbers of people who are subscribing, buying, and playing your video game, you gotta feed them with content. Alright? Once again, back with the whole analogy of the juggler, alright? You have to juggle all of them. Okay? And you're going to change a little bit here and a little bit there, but you gotta go with all of them. Okay? There are examples of games, MMOs dying off, like the World of Warcraft. They got a metric that most of the people play the World of Warcraft for their in-game raids, and so they pretty much ignored everything else, and the video game failed. There you go. PvP sucks on the World of Warcraft. The storyline, they had a great leveling experience, but they never built on the storyline. Their kind of PvE content that would exist after that to actually produce a story in the form of like dailies or one-offs, you know, basically was filling up a bar and killing enemies, and no one liked that. All right, so there you go. You didn't feed it. You gotta feed content. It can't just be in-game raids. It has to be in-game raids. It has to be attention to PvP, and it has to be attention to doing something during the downtime. That's where your crafting would come in. That's where your running of dailies would come in, and it has to be interesting. You could also augment this with throwing in dungeons or throwing in contests. Now let's get back to my personal favorite, Star Wars: The Old Republic. Star Wars: The Old Republic has never juggled everything at the same time. They've thrown stuff in there that people have kind of asked for, and you can do that, and that helps, but it still has to be good. Like Galactic Starfighter, you put that in. It still has to be good. You haven't done anything with it. You haven't changed it. You haven't evolved it, so it sucks. You have the rail shooter, which no one asked for. No one wanted to play asteroids in the middle of their Star Wars: The Old Republic. You tried to make an all-encompassing game, kudos to you, but you never did anything with it. You just put it out there and like people like it. Now we're going to go on to something else. You can't do that. You have to organically evolve your game. And unfortunately, it does have to kind of be all at once, okay? You can't just ignore PvP for as long as you did. You had a lot of PvPers. For, what was it, a year and a half, you had nothing to do with PvP. Alright? There are other things that you could have done in the meantime to help augment it. I mean, your ranked season was fine, but you even stopped that with this last expansion. You've only recently picked that up. And that's just not going to work out. You have to continue to feed with content. Now what you've done is you have paid a lot of attention on your story-driven content, and that is generally encompassed in the leveling section. Alright, so what you have actually came out with is you came out with basically a glorified series of cinematics that we basically watched. And if you want to do that, why don't you just come out with a monthly serial of Star Wars: The Old Republic, and we can just watch it. That would probably be, as far as resources, less than what you have to do now. But of course, there's already fantastic content already available. So, what you have done is you have basically cut off your group of in-game raiders, your group of people who love to do things as a group, and you've tried to make it a single-player game, which, as I said, time and time again, that doesn't work because there's many other single-player games out there that are much better, that do it much better. You're an MMO. Be an MMO. Feed us with content, okay? Feed us with new operations. Feed us with interesting flashpoints that actually go along with the story you're trying to tell, okay? That's what we want. That is really what we want. And in addition to that, you can't ignore PvP. You're putting them back up there. When's the last time, however, you actually try to balance the classes again for PvP? I mean, you might as well just balance them for PvP now, because you're not putting out any raids. You don't have to balance them for that, okay? Because everyone's, still able to get through. So you don't have to balance for in-game operations, because you're not doing any of them. So, basically this is a real good way for you to be lazy. Save your MMOs all across the board. We can no longer have one single element in an MMO. People want too much, okay? Single player games can do that, all right? Because people buy them and then they play them, and then after a month they're done with them for the most part, unless you put in some downloadable content, and then they buy that. All right, go to that model if that's what you want. But you're still going to a subscription model with an MMO that already has, a level of professionalism. There's already a level of quality that people have come to want and desire. And you have to meet that, or you have to change your business. That's it. Okay? You have to feed group content. You have to feed with operations and raids. You have to feed with PvP and balancing. And you have to feed with some kind of story-driven content to augment those things, to make them interesting. Okay? Give us a reason for being at this PvP battleground. Give us a reason for doing this operation that already is in the story. And you can continue to put that out and put in new daily areas. And, Star Wars The Old Republic, you are lazy. I get it. And you have a very rich leveling 1 through 50 scenario. You can revisit those. Put new daily areas on those maps if that's what you want. And people would love that. Okay? I mean, people would absolutely love it. You level it up 1 through 50. Now all of a sudden there is some kind of reason that is story driven for you to go and do something on Tatooine to take out a new Hutt menace or something like that, and you're using that as a daily area. Okay, and for that you also put in a PvP zone in that Tatooine area, because that's kind of like a race for resources, or the combat between the Republic and the Sith. Okay, and then you put in your in-game operation, which would be to kill some other Hutt or what have you, but still, okay, you have that. Do that. You could do the same thing, substitute, Tatooine with Alderaan, and, there's some kind of Alderaan lord that's going rogue. Put that in there. Feed that in there with the story. You can continue to do that. There you go, Star Wars The Old Republic. There's a gauntlet. I mean, do you accept the challenge for the love of God? The World of Warcraft, the other, MMO, and basically other MMOs in general. That's what you have to do to be successful. Okay? Beyond that, as kind of the fourth wall, you have to promote your game. So it's nice to do that. I mean, that's why games like Rift have not been quite as popular. A lack of money, a lack of promotion. And so it's what you got to do with games. That's what MMO players want in this day and time. So I hope you enjoyed the show. There's going to be a little bit more of a new format. I mean, I'd like to take on a few more topics, baby. It's going to be Crasus versus the world. So I hope you keep coming back. I'm going to start taking on a myriad of different issues, a myriad of different pop culture things, just, what have you. Because to be perfectly honest, as far as, the video game that I have loved to play, I've kind of taken a step back from it. I'm going to, miss it from afar. And, how can you miss it if it never goes away? So, maybe things might change. I might get back into it. But until then, Crasus will take on the world. I will take on all comers. I want to be the undisputed, undefeated champion of the world. So make sure that you like this video. Make sure you subscribe to our channels. I'm going to come up with a whole bunch of other things that you may love, things that you may hate. But, you know, looking from the views, you know, the 20 of you who occasionally look at my show, and I think the 15 bots that various companies, you know, put in. I really appreciate your views. So, you know, keep that up and tell your friends for the love of God. You know, it'd be nice to have some new faces here at the Cult of Crasus. But make sure that you do check out Captain R's Red October. Hey, you know, it's Fish Fest, baby. Fish Fest is here. Go down and enjoy it. It's right off Route 9. Until then, I'll see you out there.